إن أصلح الدول بعد الصحابة الدولة العثمانية فلا.
The Ottoman state is the best of the states after the era of the Sahaba. This state will not be destroyed until the day of judgment. When Sheikh Akbar Muhyiddin ibn Arabi Hazretleri wrote this saying in his book, Ash-Shajaratul Nu'maniyya fi Devletil Osmaniyya, no one understood what he meant except the scholars who had the knowledge of jihad, because the calendars showed the year 1230. There was no Ottoman Empire yet, and the founder of the state, Osman Bey, was still 28 years away from being born. In 1281, when the Mongols completely invaded the Khwarezm Shah Empire, the Kayi tribe, which was around Merv at the time, migrated to the Azerbaijan region with Jalaluddin Khwarezm Shah, and from there to Alat. The Kayis wandered around Islamic geographies for a while, looking for a home for themselves. When they reached the vicinity of Kabul Castle, Suleiman Shah, the head of the Kayi tribe, died, and the Kayi tribe was scattered. Some of the Kayis went south, while others stayed in Syria. Some of them, led by Ertuğrul Gazi and Sungur Tekin, came back to Anatolia with about 340 tents and settled in Adıyaman. At that time, Ulu Galadin Keykubat was at the head of the Anatolian Seljuk state. When Ertuğrul Gazi heard this, he said, "It is inevitable for us to reach the place where the value of a soldier is known." He sent his son Sarubatu to Sultan Aladin. He said, "Let him show us a place of residence." Sultan Aladin Keykubat gave Sogut between Karacahisar and Bilecik to the Kayi. Ertuğrul Gazi and his tribe, who settled in Sogut, now became a fiefdom under Aladin Keykubat. In those years, war had broken out between the Emperor Ioannis III of Nicaea and the Seljuk Sultan Aladin Keykubat. While the Seljuk army was withdrawing to the vicinity of Enguru, Ertuğrul Gazi and his Alps went to help the Seljuk army. The Kayis, who were of great benefit to the Seljuks in the siege of Karacahisar, were praised by Aladin Keykubat, and Ertuğrul Gazi was given the rank of head raider. While Ertuğrul Gazi continued his raids here, he sent his younger son Osman to Sultan Aladin Keykubat for a favor. At that time, Sultan Aladin Keykubat entered the Tariqa and became a disciple of a Sheikh Effendi and organized a banquet to announce this. However, Maulana Celaleddin Rumi, who was present in the assembly, saw this as an insult to knowledge because he did not like the Sheikh of whom the Sultan was a disciple, and left the assembly. Osman, who came to the palace of Konya, met His Holiness Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi on the stairs of the palace. When Uthman saw His Holiness Mevlana, he tied his hands and stood aside in reverence. When Hazrat Maulana asked who he was, Osman said, "I am Osman, son of Ertuğrul Gazi, one of the End Lords. I have brought a name to Sultan Aladin." Then Hazrat Maulana said that the Sultan was busy and ordered him to come with him. So they went together to the dervish lodge of Hazrat Maulana. Uthman was dressed in a Maulawi sikhen robe and sat at the feet of Hazrat Maulana. When Hazrat Maulana said to him, "My son, recite the Fatiha," Osman began to recite the Fatiha Surah. Meanwhile, Hazrat Rumi had closed his eyes and was deep in thought. When he opened his eyes, he turned to Uthman and said, "I took the Islamic Sultanate from the Seljuks and gave it to Uthman, may Allah be blessed," and said a beautiful prayer. Ertuğrul Gazi, who was an exceptionally brave, pious and virtuous man, captured the castle of Karacahisar and taxed the Tekfur of Bilecik as the Seljuk state's end governor. When Ertuğrul Bey, who had established a throne in the hearts of the Kayi tribe, passed away in 1281, they deemed Osman Gazi worthy of his father's place in Sogut. Osman Gazi inherited from his father a tiny Seljuk end principality that was still in its infancy and surrounded by enemies. Osman Gazi was exceptionally brave and courageous. He had a great power of action and initiative. He knew how to act in time and place. He was extremely cool-headed, firm and patient. He was devoted to his religion and the sublime goal he was heading towards. He had an unlimited ambition in the cause of Ilahi Kalimatullah. There was nothing or no person he could not sacrifice if it interfered with his service on the path of truth. He planned his work perfectly and left nothing to chance. From the moment Osman Bey became the head of the Kayi tribe, he was eager to expand his territory at the expense of his neighbors, the Greek Tekfurs. The Eastern Roman capital, which had been transferred to Nicaea as a result of the Ivith Crusade, had returned to Constantinople and its administration of the frontiers had been loosened. Nevertheless, Osman Beg kept his intentions in check and maintained friendly relations with the Greek beys and commanders of the new towns and Kefke in the vicinity. However, Nikola, the Tekfur of Inegol, sensed that Osman Gazi was quietly growing stronger and realized that as he grew stronger, he would conquer and rule everywhere, including himself. In order to prevent this and to break the power of the Ottoman Principality, he frequently carried out rapes against the Turkish tribesmen loyal to Osman Bey. Frustrated by these constant encroachments, Osman Bey planned an attack against the Tekfur of Inegol and thought of conquering Inegol. He took action after consulting with Akçakoka, Turgutalp, Konuralp and Abdurrahman Gazi, friends of his father Ertuğrul Gazi. As he advanced towards the Armenian waste, he encountered an ambush by Greek troops under the control of the Tekfuru of Inegol. A very fierce sword-to-sword battle began. Fighting with a very crowded enemy army, the Islamic Mujahideen had a hard time. Even Mr. Hoja, one of the most famous of the Mujahideen, drank the sherbet of martyrdom. Osman Bey and his cavalrymen attacked the enemy army with a swift charge and managed to break their circle and escape. In the end, there was no winner. Osman Gazi was sad when he returned to Sogut. He shut himself in his tent. "O my Lord, give strength to Islam. O miskin Osman, cry." He begged Allah and cried for a while. When sleep overcame him and he fell asleep, he had a dream. In his dream, he saw a moon rising from Sheikh Edebali's sash. This moon was a crescent moon and one end of the crescent moon had entered his heart. Then he saw a sycamore growing from his navel. This sycamore grew and its shadow covered the world. When he woke up, he immediately ran to his sheikh and told him about his dream. Sheikh Edebali said, "Son Osman, may the Sultanate be blessed for you and your descendants, and may my daughter Mal Hatun be your wife," and married Osman Gazi to his daughter. When Osman Gazi heard this comment, as Ashik Pashazadeh tells us, he tied the sword of his faith firmly to his chest. His courage, determination and confidence returned. Following this good news, Osman Gazi planned a raid to capture Kulacahisar. Kulacahisar was the first obstacle to the conquest of Inegol, and Osman Gazi had to overcome it first. Kulacahisar was a fortress located 5 kilometers east of Inegol and built to protect the city. If that fortress was captured, there would be nothing left to protect the city of Inegol from attack. Disguised as Greeks, a group of Alpois sneaked into the fortress, overpowered the gate guards and opened the gates as night fell. Meanwhile, Osman Gazi 450 Mujahideen waiting in ambush quickly entered through the gates and slaughtered the Greeks. They captured the castle, set it on fire and demolished its walls. Thus, the city of Inegol lost its defense garrison at Kulacahisar and the city was left defenseless. This was Osman Gazi's first conquest. With the destruction of Kulacahisar by Osman Gazi, when the Tekfur of Inegol was left defenseless, he sent a message to the Tekfur of Karacahisar and said, "Why stop? They will enslave you and your descendants. They will also take this province from our hands and ruin it. They are not estranged Sufi Turkmen, and we should have treated them accordingly. If we do not remove them from this province now, the last regret will be useless." Upon this, the Tekfur of Inegol and the Tekfur of Karacahisar agreed and united against Osman Gazi. Both of them sent their armies against Osman Gazi and the Mujahideen in Sogut and Domaniç. These two armies were marching to wipe the Ottomans off the stage of history. Osman Gazi, who learned that the Tekfur armies of Inegol and Karacahisar were coming to them, immediately moved to Domaniç to meet these armies. After reaching Iquique, they set up an ambush against the Eastern Roman army in an area where they opened the Domaniç waste and started to wait. After a long wait, the Greek army was seen arriving with a cloud of dust. The Mujahideen were waiting for Osman Bey's order. When the Greek army arrived in the planned area, Osman Bey gave the order to attack. The Mujahideen attacked the Greek army altogether and trapped the Greeks. Although the Greeks were caught unprepared, they took advantage of their superior numbers and gave the Mujahideen a hard time. However, the Kayis, who fought with Takfirs, were breaking the Greek army one by one. During these fierce battles, Osman Bey's elder brother Sarubatu was seriously wounded and martyred. With the martyrdom of Sarubatu, the winds of sadness and wrath began to blow in the Kayi ranks. The Kayis descended on the Greeks like a storm with full zeal. Meanwhile, the Greek army commander Kalonos was killed. When the Greek army, left without a head, began to scatter and flee, the Kayis pursued them. Many Greek soldiers were killed and captured that day. This was a great victory for Osman Bey. But it was a sad victory because everyone was saddened by the martyrdom of Osman Bey's beloved older brother Sarubatu. This victory brought Osman Gazi great fame. The Anatolian Seljuk Sultan of Anatolia, who heard that the Tekfur armies of Inegol and Karacahisar attacked Sogut and Osman Bey defeated them, "The Tekfur of Karacahisar has rebelled against us. Those infidels do such things. Do we not have the zeal of Islam? Gather troops quickly." And marched with his army from Konya to Karacahisar. Meanwhile, Osman Gazi and his Mujahideen followed the fleeing Greek army and advanced to Karacahisar. Osman Gazi, united with the Sultan's army, reported the situation to the Sultan. The Sultan had brought catapults and war instruments to capture Karacahisar. And together they began to besiege Karacahisar. On the third day of the siege, some whalers from Konya entered the Sultan's presence. Bilecik's Tatars attacked Konya Ereğli. They destroyed the city and set it on fire. Upon this, the Sultan summoned Osman Gazi. He handed over to Osman Gazi all the weapons he had brought for the siege of Hisar. "Son Osman Gazi, you have many signs of bliss. There is no one in the world who can resist you and your progeny. My prayer, Allah's help, the help of the awliya, and the miracles of the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, are with you." Then he handed over the siege to Osman Gazi and returned to Konya with his army. He immediately headed towards Ereğli. When the Tatars learned that Sultan Ghiyaseddin Mesud was coming, they immediately started to prepare for war against him. The two armies came face to face in a gahiyun. A fierce battle lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. In the end, the Sultan was victorious against the Tatars. No mercy was shown to the Tatars for what they had done to the people of Ereğli. Meanwhile, Osman Gazi had conquered Karacahisar, captured and executed the Tekfur of Karacahisar, and distributed many spoils to his veterans. Osman Gazi sent some of the spoils from the city to the Seljuk Sultan together with his nephew Aktimur and announced the good news of the conquest. The Sultan, who was very pleased with this news, gave Aktimur treats and sent Osman Gazi the war tools necessary for the conquest of Hisar. The church of Karacahisar was converted into a mosque, and the northwestern Anatolian lands began to listen to the call to prayer 5 times a day. In time, the Christians in the city became Muslims, attracted by the justice and tolerance under Osman Gazi, and Karacahisar became an Islamic city. After Karacahisar became an Islamic city, Muslims were settled in the city, and Dosun Faki, a student of Sheikh Edebali, was appointed Qadi, an orator. The Christian inhabitants were extremely pleased with Osman Gazi's rule, and they received the security and justice they were looking for. The Christian inhabitants of the city invited the Greek people and merchants from the neighboring regions to Karacahisar, and the Greek people began to develop affection for Osman Gazi and the Islamic cities under his rule. Because Osman Gazi was trying to develop the country, spread justice, protect the rights of the people without discriminating between Muslims and non-Muslims, and in this way he was taking the example of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. For this reason, the cities were peaceful, the roads were safe, and the people were comfortable. Osman Gazi directed his raids to Taraklı and Goynuk and took them under his rule. Osman Gazi's policy of conquest against Rome had caused fear in the cities of Bursa and Iznik. Osman Gazi did not make any raids against the Greeks for 7 years and tried to get along with the surrounding Greek tech force by establishing friendship. In 1295, Ghazan Khan, who sat on the Ilkhanid throne and was fluent in Mongolian, Chinese, Arabic, Persian, Tibetan and Turkish, became a Muslim under the influence of Qutbuddin Shirazi and Emir Nauruz, and within 9 years all Mongols living in the Ilkhanid lands had become Muslims. In 1298, Sulemish, the Mongol governor in Anatolia, led a rebellion against Ghazan Khan with 50,000 soldiers. The Turkish Mujahideen in Anatolia supported this rebellion against the Ilkhanids, while the Mamluks supported Sulemish with 20,000 horsemen. Ghazan Khan sent an army under Kutluk Shah to put down this rebellion. During this rebellion, the Seljuk Sultan Alauddin Keykubat III had left the throne, and the Seljuk throne was left empty. These two armies came face to face on the Erzincan-Akşehir plain. As a result of the battle, Sulemish was defeated and his army dispersed. As the Ilkhanids fought with each other in Anatolia and Sultan Keykubat left the palace, the principalities, which were partially left without a head, started to act freely independently of the Seljuk Sultan. The remaining Turkmen Mujahideen of Sulemish's army fled the Mongols and fled westward to the Ottoman lands, where they began to join Osman Gazi. As the Mujahideen began to join the Ottomans and Osman Gazi increased in number of soldiers, the fear of the Greek tech force increased more and more, and they started to shy away from Osman Gazi. Osman Gazi used to show respect to the infidels of Bilecik. When they asked him, "Why do you respect these Bilecik infidels?" Osman Gazi said, "They are our neighbors. We came to this province as strangers and they welcomed us. Now, we need to show respect to them." In the early days when Ertuğrul Gazi settled in Sogut, every year when the Kayi would go up and down the mountains to graze their flocks, the Greeks living in the castle of Bilecik would insult the Turks and scatter their flocks of sheep. When Ertuğrul Bey complained to the Tekfur of Bilecik about this, the Tekfur of Bilecik blamed the Turks and said that the Turks were attacking the Greeks with sticks. Ertuğrul Bey then suggested sending the Turks unarmed when they went up to the hills to graze. He also suggested that the Turks should leave their valuables as hostages in the castle of Bilecik to show their goodwill, and that they should take them back when they returned. The Tekfur accepted Ertuğrul Gazi's well-intentioned suggestions. However, he stipulated that the items left as hostages should be brought to the castle by women, not by men. He thought this would prevent any surprises. Ertuğrul Bey agreed to this request too, although he was offended by it. Thus, hostages were exchanged for years. By the time of Osman Gazi, it continued in the same way every year. Turkish women used to present the Tekfur with goods and food such as horse harnesses, honey, cream and oil. However, after the recent events, the Tekfur of Bilecik, worried like the other Tekfurs, began to accept the gifts given to him in the Turkish tradition as disrespectfully as if he were receiving taxes from a dependent tribe. Osman Gazi was insulted by this. That year, the Tekfur of Yarhisar decided to marry his daughter, Holefera, to the Tekfur of Bilecik in an alliance. The Tekfurs of Inegol, Yarhisar and Bilecik talked among themselves and decided to invite Osman Gazi, who was rapidly gaining power, to the wedding. They planned to poison and kill him while he was defenseless at the wedding. But Mihal, the Tekfuru of Harmankaya, had a truly friendly relationship with Osman Gazi. Since his conscience could not accept this treachery, he informed his friend Osman Gazi about the situation. Realizing this, Osman Gazi consulted with his commanders and devised a great plan. According to this plan, the gifts to be taken to Bilecik castle would be taken by armed mujahideen disguised as women instead of women. And when the time was right, the mujahideen would take out their weapons, disarm those in the castle and open the castle doors to the mujahideen who would wait outside. Thus, the fortress of Bilecik would be captured. Osman Gazi was to go to the wedding, and as a gift, barrels full of oil and honey were to be brought. Soldiers would be placed in these barrels, and at a moment when people were drunk at the wedding, the Tekfurs and their soldiers would be killed. On the other hand, Turgut Alp was going to besiege Inegöl with his soldiers. The Tekfur of Bilecik went to Çakırpınar for the wedding. Osman Gazi placed his most valiant warriors in barrels and himself set off with 30 men. The soldiers, disguised as women, arrived in the city of Bilecik with horses loaded with weapons instead of valuables. Most of the people and guards had gone to a wedding, so there were few people left in Bilecik. It was very easy for the mujahideen to capture it. The guards in the castle were killed and the gates were opened, and 100 mujahideen waiting outside entered. With no one left to defend, the city of Bilecik was captured in a very short time. The Tekfur of Bilecik, who was unaware of the events, was looking for an opportunity to kill Osman Gazi at the wedding. However, he was unaware of Osman Gazi's trap. Finding the right time when people started to get drunk, Osman Gazi gave orders to his soldiers. The mujahideen who came out of the barrels suddenly caused a stir. The Tekfur of Bilecik was captured by the Mujahideen and beheaded. Thus, the city of Bilecik was captured without spilling the blood of the Mujahideen, and the Tekfuru of Bilecik was killed. Meanwhile, Turgut Alp had besieged the city of Inegöl with catapults and siege engines sent by the Seljuk Sultan. Osman Gazi also besieged the city of Yarhisar without wasting time with the soldiers under his command. The city of Inegöl could not withstand Turgut Alp's fierce offensive. The people of Inegöl complained about the unjust rule of the Tekfur, and, knowing that the Christians in Karacahisar were living in prosperity, they almost wanted Osman Gazi to seize the city. Osman Gazi, who had taken control of Yarhisar, came to Turgut Alp's aid with the soldiers under his command. Unable to resist any longer, the city of Inegöl was forced to surrender. The Tekfuru of Inegöl was killed. Thus, Osman Gazi conquered 3 cities in one campaign, and his borders expanded rapidly. According to a rumor, the Seljuk Sultan who abdicated the throne that year was executed by the Mongols. Due to this headlessness in the Seljuk Empire, the Anatolian Seljuk state was divided into parts. Each divided part was ruled by an independent bey. Thus, the period of principalities started again in Anatolia. With no authoritarian sultan to swear allegiance to, Osman Gazi began to govern the lands he ruled in his own name and to print his own tugra on coins, and in 1299, the Ottoman Empire was officially established. The city of Iznik, the first capital of the Anatolian Seljuk Empire, had been captured by the Muslims during the First Crusade, and the Seljuk capital had to be moved to Konya. However, the Seljuks' desire to reclaim their ancestral heirloom, the city of Nicaea, had never ceased. The arid Eskişehir plain, where the Turks had been driven back, had now become the border between Rome and the Seljuks. However, the nomadic Turkmens needed the good pastures beyond the border and often entered Roman territory to graze their flocks. The East Roman governors, on the other hand, were uncomfortable with the Turkmen incursions into their territory, so they built fortresses along the border and tried to prevent the Turkmens from entering Roman territory. In 1176, at the Battle of Myriokephalon between Rome and the Seljuks won a great victory and defeated the Greek army. When the Greek emperor offered peace, Sultan Kılıç Arslan's first condition for peace was the demolition of the Greek fortresses built in the frontier regions. It was clear that the Seljuks, especially the Seljuk veterans at the fringes, had never abandoned the idea of reconquering Nicaea for Islam. For Muslims, once a country became part of Dar al-Islam, it would always be considered an Islamic country. Its loss was believed to be temporary. Therefore, the reconquest of Iznik was an ultimate goal for the Kayi tribe, one of the Seljuks' end beys. Now, Osman Gazi, who had become independent from the Anatolian Seljuks, had conquered the cities of Bilecik, Yarhisar and Inegöl and turned his attention to the old Seljuk capital of Iznik. At this time, when Osman Gazi was expanding his territory, the Greeks living in Bithynia were not afraid of the Ottoman soldiers and even helped the Ottomans in their conquest. According to the Greek historian Paimires, the governor of Nicaea treated the Greek people like bandits and even persecuted the monks living in the monasteries in the region for being heretics. The Greek people who had come under Ottoman rule reported that they lived their religion more freely and were governed with justice, and other Greeks in the region were eager to join the Ottoman rule. Having conquered the cities of Bilecik, Yarhisar and İnegöl, Osman Gazi continued his conquest against the Greek cities and castles in the vicinity. Having captured Yenisehir and Kopruhisar, Osman Gazi turned them into fortified positions and made Yenisehir, which opened to the Bursa plain in the west and İznik plain in the north, his new capital. Osman Gazi, who settled in Yenisehir, was planning the conquest of İznik as a priority. Osman Gazi considered the conquest of this city as one of the most important tasks, and without any warning, he completed his preparations and marched towards İznik. Osman Gazi took control of the area around the city of İznik in a short time and built a watchtower near İznik. In this way, the city of İznik was blockaded. Since the roads leading to the city of İznik were cut off, the people of İznik, who could not provide the city with food, secretly sent news to the Greek emperor and asked for help. Since the Roman emperor's main goal was to regain the lost lands in the west, his best troops were depleted in Thrace, Macedonia and Greece, and therefore he could not give much importance to his lands in Anatolia. When Emperor Andronikos II learned that Osman Gazi had besieged the city of İznik and captured the cities of Bilecik, Yarhisar and İnegöl, he prepared an army of 7,000 mercenaries. While the soldiers were loaded onto ships and set out to liberate the city of İznik, the emperor sent news to the Tekfurs in Bursa and its vicinity and ordered them to gather an army against Osman Gazi and to take back the lost Greek cities. Upon this, the Tekfurs started to prepare an army against Osman Gazi. A Mujahid who was in Istanbul at the time informed Osman Gazi that the emperor was preparing an army to liberate İznik and that this army had already set sail on ships. Osman Gazi also learned that the Tekfurs of Bursa, Edrenos, Kita and Kestel were preparing an army against him. These two dangers coming from the north and the west had put Osman Gazi in a difficult situation. Osman Gazi took a quick decision and had to lift the siege of İznik. He retreated to the new city and started to prepare to meet the Tekfur armies. The Greek armies had gathered and marched on the new city. Osman Gazi and his soldiers also moved towards this large Tekfur army. The two armies faced each other in the darkness of night. Shortly before dawn, Osman Gazi ordered the front-line Muslims to attack. Musalon, the commander of the Greek army, remained on the defensive with spear infantry in the front line. Behind the spear infantry in the front line were the cavalry. In this way, Musalon planned to stop Osman Gazi's shock attack with the spearmen in the front line and to surround Osman Gazi's soldiers with the cavalry in the rear. The Muslims under Osman Gazi fought the Greek infantry fast and hard. In this first battle, the Greek infantry managed to stop Osman Gazi's horsemen to a considerable extent. Musalon then ordered the cavalry to surround Osman Gazi. During the battle, Osman Gazi saw that the cavalry was opening up from the right and left flanks and called for support from his right and left flanks. Osman Gazi and his Muslims were surrounded by the Greek cavalry. However, the Mujahideen coming from behind quickly attacked the Greek cavalry. Osman Gazi and the Muslims turned away from the spear-wielding infantry and attacked the Greek cavalry together with the Mujahideen coming from behind. The Greek cavalry, pinned down on both sides, needed support. Musalon then ordered the spear infantry to charge. But the pikemen were frightened by the terrible battle that was taking place before their eyes. The Ottoman Mujahideen were crushing the Greek cavalry, each one like a lion. Shields were being smashed and horses were being knocked down one by one. Musalon repeated his order to charge the infantry, but the pikemen did not listen to Musalon's order. With fear in their hearts, almost all of them threw down their shields and fled. The Greek cavalry, on the other hand, could not hold out any longer and began to surrender. Seeing that he had lost the battle, the Greek commander Musalon left the battlefield. The victory was definitely for Osman Gazi and his Mujahideen. As a result of this battle, many captives and booty were taken, and the fame of Osman Gazi and his Mujahideen spread throughout Anatolia and Islamic lands. Learning that Osman Gazi had started a great movement against the Kufa, all the veterans started to join the ranks of Osman Gazi. So many volunteer Mujahideen were gathered that in a short time the number of soldiers under Osman Gazi's command even exceeded the number of soldiers of the Greek army. Among those who came to the Ottoman lands were not only veterans but also artisans, scholars and sophists. In a short period of time, the Ottoman state gained military, economic and cultural wealth. Rome, on the other hand, did not even have the strength to challenge Osman Gazi. The most important cities of eastern Rome on the Anatolian side were undoubtedly Bursa, Iznik and Izmit. The walls of these cities were thick and high. It was very difficult to capture them. Knowing that these cities could not be easily conquered, Osman Gazi decided to conquer the villages and towns around the cities. He first set out to conquer Bursa and its surroundings. In a short time, Kayi, Kestel and Ulubat castles were conquered. He blockaded the city of Bursa and ordered 2 fortresses to be built around it. He placed soldiers in these fortresses and ordered that no one should leave Bursa and no one should enter the city. With the participation of Mujahideen in the Ottoman lands, there were dozens of commanders and Mujahideen waiting for Osman Gazi's orders. It was very difficult to stop these Mujahideen who were burning with the love of expedition, Gaza and jihad. They were only waiting for Osman Gazi to point out the lands to be conquered. Since the vicinity of Bursa had been completely conquered, the cities of Iznik and Izmit remained, but they needed support from someone who knew these regions well. Osman Gazi sent a message to his friend the Tekfur of Harmankaya and asked him to help his army in the raids around Sakarya. Upon this, Mihal, the Tekfur of Harmankaya, set out with his men and reached Osman Gazi. He said that he wanted to become a Muslim and wanted to join Osman Gazi and wage jihad with him. Seeing that his friend wanted to become a Muslim, Osman Gazi's eyes filled and he began to shed tears of joy. He taught him the word of martyrdom and helped him become a Muslim. Thus Mihal, the Tekfuru of Harmankaya, changed his name to Abdullah Mihal and became a Muslim. Mihalolu raiders, whose name we often hear in Ottoman history, were descended from this person. After making the necessary preparations for the conquest, Osman Gazi ordered Mihal and Saltuk Alp to stop at Karacahisar with Orhan Gazi and ensure the security of the country. Then he completed his war preparations and set out for conquest. He first arrived in front of Kulacahisar. The Tekfur of this fortress agreed to surrender to Osman Gazi without any resistance. Osman Gazi rewarded him and left him as the ruler of his own fortress. The Tekfurs of Lefke and Tentlik also voluntarily surrendered their cities and asked to join the Ottoman Empire. Samsa Çavuş, one of the trainers of Ertuğrul Gazi, said to Osman Gazi, "Lady, assign this province to my servant, so that I may leave no way for the subjugated to rebel again and no possibility for them to unite with the enemy again." Osman Gazi replied to her request as follows: "To drive them out of their homeland and take them to another place would result in the closing of the door of obedience, never to be opened again. After that, no one will have the will to submit voluntarily, and it will not be possible to conquer enemy countries unless sharp swords shed blood." Thus, Samsa Çavuş's wish was denied. Nevertheless, in order to honor this brave man who was devoted to him, he ordered the fortress by the Yenisehir water to be added to his fief. This place is still known as Çavuş village. Then Osman Gazi came in front of Yenisehir with his army. The Tekfur of this place also surrendered to Osman Gazi without any resistance, and he was complimented by Osman Gazi, and he was included among the soldiers who had shadowed victories. From here, they went to Akhisar. The Tekfur of Akhisar confronted Osman Gazi with his army. A battle was fought in front of the city of Akhisar. However, the Greeks soon dispersed and retreated to the fortress. After a short siege, the city was conquered. Then came Gaiv. When they refused to surrender, the city was besieged and captured. From here he came to Tekfurspring and annexed it to his country. Thus, he showed his face of trust and confidence to the people of the cities conquered as a result of the campaign, full of goodness, right and justice, and distributed the revenues of these lands to the Saipers holding fiefs and set out to return to Karacahisar. At that time, Chavdar Tatars, who were known as Chavdalu and engaged in evil deeds, moved from Jeremian province and entered the Ottoman lands and plundered the markets. Orhan, who heard about this, rushed there like lightning with a few hundred soldiers he took with him. He captured the marauders in front of Oynaşhisar and captured the head of the bandits by offering the thirsty with watered swords. Those who had escaped the sword left their looted belongings and scattered like a flock of chickens. Having thus crushed the bandits, Orhan brought the captives to the city of Karacahisar. The people of Hisar welcomed Orhan with applause and prayers. When Osman Gazi returned to Karacahisar with glory and honor, he was amazed when he heard that his valiant son had succeeded and captured the enemy. When he saw that his son Orhan had matured more than he thought and showed an extraordinary presence in the battlefields, he appointed him as the chief of his troops in order to make him well known with his conquests. Assigning commanders such as Abdurrahman Gazi, Akçakoça, Konur Alp and Mihal to him, he asked him to conquer Karachish, a city with strong fortifications on the banks of the Sakarya River and difficult to conquer, in order to test and improve his war management skills. When Orhan, who spread fear around him, approached Karachish, he divided the troops under his command into three. The first company went behind the Hisar and hid. The other company lay in ambush on a suitable ground in that place. Orhan, with his remaining force, took shelter opposite the castle. After a few days of waiting, the Hisar Tekfur gathered his troops and attacked. After a short battle, Orhan gave the order to retreat. Thereupon the Kufa started to chase, thinking that they had won a victory. All the soldiers in the city went out in the hope of getting a share of the booty and started to chase. Seeing that the city was emptying out, the troops behind the citadel quickly approached the walls, climbed up the undefended walls with ladders, and easily entered the city. Orhan, who was on the run, signaled when he came close to the army waiting in ambush. The Ottoman soldiers emerged from the ambush and quickly attacked the pursuing Greeks. Orhan also turned with his soldiers and rushed at them. Frightened, the Greek soldiers began to retreat back to the city on their fast horses. However, when they returned, they encountered a great surprise. The gates would not open and arrows were raining down on them from the castle. The Ottoman soldiers had already captured the castle. Orhan, who caught up quickly, pressed the Greeks against the walls. Thus, Orhan conquered the Karachish castle in a brilliant way and proved his brilliance to the world. Karachish castle was given to Konur Alp. Orhan then marched to Akyazı, while Akçakoça marched north with the soldiers under his command. The siege of Akyası lasted a long time, and finally Orhan left its conquest to Konoralp and moved on to the fortress of Karatekin. The Tekfur of Karatekin was also offered peace, but the self-confident Tekfur chose to fight. In the first attack, Orhan had turned the fortress into a mansion for those who fought in the way of religion and a stop for the helpers of religion. Osman Gazi's strong temperament and sturdy constitution had deteriorated over time due to a number of pains and stumbles, and a disease with a difficult cure had emerged. When this illustrious sovereign could no longer endure the campaigns, the mighty Orhan began to look even more terrible in the eyes of the enemy, and his father's main wish was to gain fame with the conquest of castles and fortresses one after another. For this purpose, he had sent the beautiful lady of good fortune to conquer Bursa as the head of the troops who aimed for victories and with this state and glory. Finally, on April 6, 1326, with Mihal's support, the city of Bursa was conquered without bloodshed. Although Orhan, the ruler of the time, was overwhelmed with joy with this conquest that captured hearts, the increasing illness of his gracious ancestor caused sorrow to attack him. When he came to his father to visit the Sultan of those who fought for the sake of religion, when he saw the beautiful face of his father, who had seen the day and hoped, shining with sweet smiles, and rejoiced, he realized that no medicine would help his illness anymore. Osman Gazi gave the following advice to his son Orhan before his death. O son, pay attention to religious affairs before everything else, because observance of the obligatory duties leads to the strengthening of religion and the state. Protect the state treasury and try to increase the wealth of the state. Watch over the state officials who work faithfully for the sake of Allah. After their death, take care of their children and provide for their needs. Do not encroach upon the property of any of your people. Extend help and favor to those who deserve it and save their relatives from hardship. Protect the military men well. Scholars, sages and intellectuals are the strength of the body of the state. Give them compliments and treat them well. May the ulama, the wise men and the learned men increase in your government. And may the affairs of politics and religion find order. Take an example from me, that I came to these lands as a weak Bey and received so much help from Allah Almighty, even though I did not deserve it. Follow my path and protect this religion of Muhammadiyah and its companions and those who follow you. Observe Allah's right and the law of the servants, and do not hesitate to advise those after you in this way. Be just and fair. Keep lifting oppression. Trust in Allah's help in every endeavor. Protect your people from enemy invasion and oppression. Reward the people, win the consent of all of them.